Ahir, Guardian of Malor, Chapter 14, Rushing Through the Portal. Trixie dropped down to her knees and cried. She'd finally had a relationship with Ahir, and he was taken away from her, just like her parents. It wasn't fair. Why was everyone close to her taken away? She started punching the blacktop, uncaring that it scraped her knuckles. Syllable rushed to her side. "It'll be all right, Trixie. We'll get Ahir back somehow." Trixie shoved Syllable over onto his side and screamed,
"How are we going to do that? Lancon controls him now. He's not even in this dimension anymore. How are we supposed to save him?"
Alicia walked over to Trixie's side with Daniel limping behind her.
"Trixie, are you all right?"
Between sobs, Trixie replied,
"Of course I'm not all right. I've lost almost all my friends today. Milton's probably dead. Here's as good as dead, and who knows what those RSA will do to Barbo. I wish I was dead too."
Daniel put a comforting hand on her shoulder.
"You don't mean that."
Trixie pushed his hand away.
"Yes, I do. Then at least I wouldn't hurt like this anymore."
Syllable nuzzled her hand. "There is still hope, Trixie. I can open a portal as well. We can still go after Ahir and save him." Trixie shook her head.
"What am I supposed to do with just a shield?"
Alicia slapped Trixie in the face. Trixie raised her hand up to her stinging cheek and stared in shock at Alicia.
"Pull yourself together, girl. Someone just told you have a chance to save your friend and you're going to give up without even trying?"
Trixie blinked a few times, and then a determined look came to her face.
"You're right. I love Ahir. I can't just give up on saving him before I even try. We're going to need some help, though."
Trixie's determined look was replaced with more tears.
"I wish Milton was here."
Alicia threw her hands up in the air, and the radio on her shoulder crackled.
"Officer Hardy, respond. Officer Alicia Hardy, please respond."
Alicia picked up her radio and said into it,
"Dispatch, this is Officer Alicia Hardy."
The radio was silent for a moment, and a voice replied,
"There has been a development in that case you sent the CSI to investigate. The young man has been found."
Trixie rose to her feet and eerily moved to Alicia's side.
"They found Milton? Is he okay?" "Dispatch, can you confirm the young man's condition?"
Alicia released the button on the side of her radio and listened for a reply.
"The young man is injured and being checked out at St. Thomas Hospital in Fort Ave."
"Thank you, Dispatch. Alicia, over."
Alicia turned and smiled at Trixie.
"I'm glad that they found your friend."
Trixie smiled and wiped her tears away from her eyes.
"I am too. If Milton is okay, that means that he can help me save Ahir. With his help, I might be able to do it."
Syllable nodded his head. "I agree that having Milton with us will greatly increase our chances for success. The Poega jersey is not the Gladio Protecate, but it makes little difference in his hands." Alicia indicated her car.
"Climb in and I'll get you to the hospital as fast as I can."
She turned and looked Daniel over.
"You had better come too. We should really get you checked out."
Daniel frowned.
"I'm fine, but I'm coming along with you anyway. I want to help save Ahir Barbo too."
Trixie patted Syllable on the head.
"Milton will have a plan to save Ahir, and everything will be fine."
Trixie shrieked when she saw Milton laying in a hospital bed, and the doctor shaking his head at the bloody gaping hole where his eye had been. His face was covered in red scratches that looked like talon marks.
"Milton, what happened?"
Milton grunted and then cringed when he did so. "Torjad attacked me. I overheard him plotting with Lancon about how to defeat Ahir, and he caught me. He plucked my eye out, tied me up, and stuffed me inside the wall. I've lived in that apartment for 2 years, and I never knew that a secret panel was there." Milton looked around. "Speaking of Ahir, where is he?" A tear formed in Trixie's eye.
"Ahir is gone."
Milton sat up and cringed, and the doctor pushed him back down into the bed. "What do you mean Ahir is gone?" Daniel stepped forward.
"Your friend was fighting against 2 Arius Avum and barely managing to stay alive."
Milton smirked. "I knew that guy would be hopeless on his own." Daniel cleared his throat and continued.
"Yes, well, a 3rd Arius Avum appeared and took Barbo back through the portal with him. After that, Ahir lost it and started attacking with magic."
Milton groaned. That fool! He did exactly what Torjad wanted him to do!" Everyone looked silently at the ground for a moment. "So Lancon has the sword now?" Trixie nodded.
"We have to do something. Otherwise Ahir and the Arius Avon will be gone forever."
The doctor started to wrap a bandage around Milton's empty eye socket, and Milton sighed. "Did Torjad take my bow with him?" Alicia shook her head.
"No, it's sitting down in evidence at the station. We found it in your apartment when we went looking for you."
"Good. I'm going to need you to get that for me before we go after Ahir." The doctor's face lit up. "You aren't going anywhere until you have recovered, young man." Milton turned and glared at the doctor with his remaining eye. "Are you going to stop me? If nothing is done, then we are all going to be destroyed. Daniel gasped.
I thought this Lane Khan just wanted to take over his world.
Milton pushed the doctor aside and sat up. When he possessed Captain Ember, I heard him shouting about burning our world to the ground once he was finished with his world. Syllabo, can you open a portal to anywhere in your world, or is it random where they open up? Syllabo nodded his head. You'll have to know where you want the portal to open in order for the spell to work. I can take you to anywhere in my world that you want. Milton nodded. Good. If you can open the portal inside of the palace, we might be able to get some supplies and some help from some of your people. We're going to need all the help we can get. Trixie bit her lip.
When are we going to save Ahir?
Milton looked at Trixie. We need to go as soon as possible. Every second we waste here gives Lane Khan a better chance to achieve his goals. If one of the police officers can go and get my bow for me, we can leave as soon as they get back. We have some planning to do until then if we hope to get through this alive. Alicia nodded her head.
I can go down to the station and get your bow for you. Have Daniel radio me if you think of anything else we'll need for our trip. You can fill me in under the plane when I get back.
Milton crossed his arms. I appreciate the help, but you and Daniel aren't going with us. Alicia put her fists on her hips and leaned in close to Milton's face.
I'm not about to let a couple of kids put themselves in danger trying to save the world while I sit back and do nothing. We're going with you, so you had better just accept that.
Milton growled back. What is it you think you'll be able to do exactly? We're going to be going to a world full of Ahir's Avum, creatures that can only be hurt by one weapon, one that isn't in our possession any longer, and you won't even be human. Once you step through that portal, you will be turned into some kind of monster and will only get in our way. Alicia trembled with anger.
That's not fair! They may have other artifacts like the ones that you two used that we could help with.
Milton shook his head. Even if they do have more artifacts, you will have no experience with them. Knowing how to pull the bowstring and aim it is one thing. Knowing how to use the effects of your artifact effectively is another, and there won't be time for you to learn. Alicia pointed her finger at Milton's face and opened her mouth to say something, but Daniel grabbed her arm. She turned and faced him. Daniel shook his head.
They're right, Alicia. We will be more help by staying behind. Arguing with them is only going to take up precious time.
Alicia ground her teeth together and said,
Fine. I'll go and get your bow and watch you kids sacrifice yourself for the rest of the world, but I won't have to like it.
Alicia turned and stomped out of the room. Milton watched her storm out and turned back to Trixie and Syllabo. Now that that is taken care of, we need to figure out our strategy. Syllabo says he can open us a portal into the palace. Whatever else is going on in the world, it shouldn't have reached the palace yet. We can try and find any others there that will be willing to fight with us. Syllabo raised a paw. If I may interject, my people are a peaceful lot and have no experience fighting. I don't know how much aid they could provide you with. Milton nodded. I'm aware of that, but they are indestructible creatures, so they could serve as a distraction at least, so we don't have to fight those loyal to Lane Khan alone. Syllabo nodded his head. I could see the advantage of such a thing. You could count on me to be by your side, providing as much aid as I am able. Laz Crit may have some additional artifacts that the two of you could use. Trixie smiled.
Those could be very useful. Maybe Daniel and Alicia can come with us after all.
Milton frowned. No, that would be a bad idea. You and I have experience with wielding things like this, and we would at least have the artifacts that we have now to help us while we figure out the other ones. After that, we'll have to march on to Lane Khan's fortress, figure out some way to save Ahir, and get the sword back. Syllabo sighed. It'll be a challenge for sure. Lane Khan has hundreds of those that are loyal to him, and each of those won't hesitate to blast the two of you with spells. Milton smiled back confidently. I'm not too worried about that. Between Trixie's shield reflecting the spells back at their caster, and my bow maneuvering us out of the way, we'll manage somehow. Syllabo growled. You're not taking this seriously enough. Trixie does very well with her shield, but even she can't cover everything at once. All it will take is for one spell to get through, and you could die. Milton's face turned grim. That is true, but if we were concerned about dying, do you think we ever would have started fighting back against these creatures? Ahir is the only one that could truly fight back, so we have to go and save him so we can end this. We have been chosen as the protectors of our world, and yours, and that's a duty I take very seriously. Syllabo looked away. Humans are flawed in many ways, but your people produce something that mine never has. Heroes. True, selfless heroes. Trixie smiled.
I'm certain there are plenty of heroes among your people. You just live in a place that doesn't give them a chance to develop. Look at you and Barbo. You were willing to come to a strange world to protect your people from the only thing that can harm them. That makes you heroes in my book.
Trixie's face turned serious.
So how do we get Ahir back to normal?
Milton sighed. I've been thinking about that, and I've noticed that when we were fighting Captain Ember, it seems like we were fighting against Lang Khan. Each of the Arias Avum that we faced seemed to be different. They were individuals, all working toward the same goal. Trixie nodded her head.
Now that you mention it, that is true. Ahir certainly didn't sound like Ahir when he was turned. He talked to Torja like he was used to giving him commands. How will that help us?
Milton shrugged. I don't know for sure, but if Lang Khan is directly controlling Ahir, we might be able to get through to him if we distract Lang Khan. At the very least, we'll be able to attack Lang Khan easier if he has to divide his focus like that. Syllabo scratched his head. Would it be more beneficial to us if we had more humans get turned in? The more minds he has to divide his focus among, the greater advantage that would give us. Trixie looked questioningly at Milton, who just shook his head. That could prove useful, but Lang Khan has no reason to divide his focus among them. He has Ahir, and he only needs him long enough to deliver the sword to him. We don't have any way to know for certain if there would be any way to bring those people back if we were to go through with that plan. Trixie gasped.
What? You don't think there's any way to bring Ahir back?
Milton cringed. There is a chance there is no way, or it could be as simple as killing Lang Khan. Torja once said that was the way to turn the Arias Avum back to normal. Syllabo growled. I wouldn't trust anything Torja said. Milton nodded his head. I agree, but that's enough planning for now. Until we get to the other side of the portal, we won't know for sure what to expect. Syllabo nodded. The spell that opened the portal takes some time to perform. I'll begin my preparations for that. Trixie looked at him.
What should we do while you work on that?
Syllabo shrugged. I will recommend getting some rest if you can. There's no telling how long this fight will last. Alicia walked into the hospital room with Milton's bow gripped in her right hand and a bulging bag hung over her shoulder.
I have everything here you asked for. Are you sure I can't talk you into letting me come along?
Trixie shook her head.
This isn't your fight. Did you get the things for Barbo I asked you to?
Alicia patted the bag slung over her shoulder.
Right here.
Alicia looked at the field of blue shimmering in the middle of the hospital room.
Is that the thing that's going to take you to the other side?
Milton walked up to Alicia and took his bow from her. He pushed his glasses up his nose with his ring finger and nodded. Yes, and I would appreciate it if you and Daniel could watch over it. We don't want anyone accidentally falling into it before we come back. Alicia looked confused at Milton.
You aren't going to close it once you go through?
Milton shook his head. Once we're done with this, we might not be able to open another portal. This could be our only way back home. Daniel clapped Milton on the back, and Milton winced a little.
We'll keep an eye on it for you.
Milton nodded his head and accepted the sack of supplies from Alicia. It's time for us to go. He walked over to the portal, and Trixie and Syllabo followed him. Milton paused in front of the portal for a moment, and then stepped into it. Walking into the portal felt like trying to wade through waist-deep mud. Every step was an effort, and came so slowly that Milton wondered if this was what it would be like in the Arias Avum's world as well. If it was, how could they hope to do anything? Milton suddenly stumbled forward and almost tripped as the feeling of wading through mud disappeared. He regained his footing, turned and waited for Trixie and Syllabo to enter as well. Once they had joined him, they turned and ran down the blue tunnel that looked like it never ended. Milton looked for the end of the tunnel, but couldn't see anything but more tunnels stretching on. How much further until we reached the end? Syllabo smiled at Milton. Not too much further, but you seem surprised. Did you think that a tunnel between dimensions would be short? Milton smiled back. Considering it is a magic one, yes, I did expect it to be a little shorter. They continued to run for a little longer, and finally a white light appeared in front of them. Syllabo darted ahead of Trixie and Milton. I think I should take the lead from here. 2 monsters appearing out of a portal might make the king uneasy. Syllabo jumped into the light and disappeared. Milton ran at the light, expecting there to be resistance like when they had entered the portal, but he passed easily through the light and found himself in a building unlike any other he had ever seen. Pillars made up of 3 columns of stone braided together lined a carpet that the closest word that Milton could find to describe it was red, but that wasn't quite right. It had beautiful patterns woven into it with more colors that Milton couldn't comprehend. Then his eyes fell upon the creatures that stood staring at him and the portal. Tall, lanky creatures stood around the room in long draping robes of various hues, pointed at him and whispered to those near them. Their faces were the only part of their skin that was exposed, and it was a soft, creamy white, with 2 lines of lilac purple that started at the top of their head, passed over their eyes, and continued down their necks. Fear filled their large eyes, with irises that ranged in color from green to lilac to yellow, and they all took a step back away from him. One of the creatures that was seated on a golden throne, with a teal band decorated with stones of glowing green and yellow around his head, stood up and took a step forward.
Syllabo, who are these strangers you return with? I do not recognize the young female with you that is dressed so scandalously.
Milton turned to see who the creature was talking about, and jumped in surprise when he saw a creature that looked just like the others around the room, except instead of robes, it was dressed in blue jeans that were far too short for it, and a tight-fitting red blouse that accentuated its ample bosom, meaning that this one was clearly female. Another of the creatures that was standing close to Milton turned and started across his face once his eyes landed upon the female, and then he smiled. I did not expect you to take the form of my people, Trixie. I expected something more like Milton, perhaps. The creature, which Milton was assuming was Syllabo, turned and faced the creature that had addressed him. I return with ill tidings, my lord. Lang Khan is corrupted Ahir, and he brought him and the Gladio Protégate back to our world. I brought the other two chosen to try and thwart his plans. This is Trixie, bearer of the Escudo Spiegel, and this is Milton, bearer of the Poega Georgi. The creature by the golden throne walked up to Milton and Trixie and bowed down to one knee.
I must thank you for the efforts you have put into protecting my people. It was not easy for me to ask for aid, especially from a people I did not know, but you have done well. Your appearance is a surprise, though. I did not expect to find a human with the heart of an Ars Avum. Your visit is well timed, for my son has begun his assault on the city.
Syllabo reached for the arm of the man kneeling before them and tried to raise him up to his feet. What is he doing, King Darduel? King Darduel stood to his feet.
He has been sending monsters, much like this creature, Milton, I believe you called him, to attack the city. Some of the citizens have lashed out at them with magic, and I'm afraid that more of our people have fallen under Lang Khan's influence as a result of it. Perhaps we could start with taking care of them.
Milton shook his head. No, that would be a mistake. We have to ignore the monsters for now. The king gasped.
But they are destroying our city! The city has stood since my great-great-grandfather founded it!
Milton groaned. They are just buildings. Buildings can be rebuilt, but your people can't. These monsters have been put here to distract us, and we can't allow any delay in our attack against Lang Khan. The Ars Avum around the room gasped and started to murmur angrily to one another. Darduel raised his hand.
Silence! This creature is right. As much as it pains me, we can rebuild once peace has returned to us. I will listen to what he has to say.
Milton looked confused. You keep saying creature. What did I end up turning into? Trixie held up the polished surface of her shield and smiled.
See for yourself.
Milton turned and looked into the mirror and gasped. He was covered in tan fur from head to toe, and had claws at the ends of his fingers. He had the head of a lion and a golden mane that encircled his neck, and one golden eye that seemed to glow stared back at him. I got turned into a cat? You got turned into an Ars Avum, and I got turned into a cat man? Trixie smiled.
You're a lion. It's a good look for you.
Darduel cleared his throat.
I believe you were going over strategies for defeating Lang Khan.
Milton turned to face the room. We have to attack Lang Khan directly. The only way we will be able to end this is if we get the Gladio Protégate back from him and kill him with it. Darduel's face fell.
Is there no way to end this without ending the life of my son?
Syllabo gave the king a sympathetic look. I'm certain that we can find a peaceful way to resolve this. Perhaps we could just capture him. Milton shook his head. No. The only way this ends is if Lang Khan is dead. As long as he is alive, his followers will destroy this kingdom to free him. A tear formed in Darduel's eye.
Is that to be my legacy? The thing I am remembered by? Being the only king to outlive my son?
Murmurs filled the room, filled with outrage and anger. Milton growled. We don't have time to worry about that now. Every moment we delay makes Lang Khan's victory surer. One of the other Ars Avum in the room shouted out,
Why should we listen to a horrible-looking creature like you?
Trixie stepped forward.
Please, we're only trying to help you save as many of your people as we can.
More Ars Avum started to shout out their complaints. Darduel roared out,
We are going to hear what they have to say. They have been fighting our war with Lang Khan this whole time, while we quivered in fear, hoping they would fix our problems. I will not reject their ideas now.
Silence fell over the room, and the king looked at Milton.
Tell us what you need from us, and it will be given to you. Just promise me you will shed as little blood as you can.
Milton nodded. We need to get to wherever Lang Khan is hiding, and get the sword from him before he can remove the protection spell that makes it so only Ahir can wield it. One of the Ars Avum in the room interrupted.
He's not exactly hiding. He's in his palace in the Nather district.
Milton nodded. Trixie and I are going to need someone to show us where that is, and that brings me to the next part. We need some of your people to volunteer to fight alongside us. Roars of outrage filled the room, and one of the Ars Aeum stepped forward and angrily said,
We're not barbarians like you humans. We don't know the first thing about fighting.
Milton growled back. You expect to be able to sit back and let others fight your battles for you? You thrust your problems onto strangers, insult us, and expect us to fix everything for you? If that's so, you are cowards and snobs. Shock gasps filled the room. King Darduo turned and faced his people.
He is right. This is our problem. It always has been, and by us pushing our problems onto others, we have brought them pain and misery.
He turned back to Milton.
They are right as well. We are not fighters. What use could we possibly be to you?
Your people cannot die, can't even be injured. Who knows how many followers Lang Khan has out there that will try to stop us? The two of us would never be able to make it through alone, but with others there to distract them, we might be able to make it. It's the best chance we have of winning this. Syllabo stepped forward. I will fight alongside you and Trixie, Milton. I'm sure many of my people will join me in doing our part to save our world. The room was filled with hushed whispers, and Syllabo blushed. Perhaps many others that are not currently in this room?
Darduo stepped forward. I will join you also. I will spread an edict through the city asking for volunteers.
Milton shook his head. I cannot accept your offer of aid, your majesty. If Lang Khan is able to capture you or kill you with the Gladio Predicate, then your people will be left without a leader. The king sighed.
You are right.
He turned to Syllabo.
As my scribe, take down and have this proclamation distributed immediately. All of our people are to gather before the palace for an announcement I am to make.
Syllabo bowed. Immediately, sire. He quickly left the room, calling for a quill and parchment. A bulky Ars Aeum stepped forward and bowed before the king.
I may have some other items that could be of use in this upcoming battle, sire.
Darduo smiled.
Of course. That is an excellent suggestion.
He turned to Trixie and Milton.
This is Law's Crit, our master blacksmith. Please follow him to his vault of artifacts and see if you can find any that will be of use to you.
Law's Crit turned and led the way out of the throne room and led them down a series of halls. Trixie and Milton stared in awe at the wonders that decorated the halls. From the murals and statues to the wall hangings and pottery, each was more beautiful and vibrant than any artwork they had ever seen. Law's Crit turned and smiled at the two of them.
Have you enjoyed using two of my masterpieces?
Milton and Trixie looked up startled. Milton looked at the bow in his hand. This bow is incredible, and has saved my life in many fights. Trixie smiled back.
Nothing can hurt my friends as long as I have this shield. I am very grateful for it.
Law's Crit nodded.
Good, good. Now, what kind of artifact were the two of you looking for?
Milton closed his eye in concentration. I think something that would give us improved mobility would be best. Unless you have anything that could protect us from magic. Law's Crit shook his head.
I'm afraid the pretty lady has the only thing I made that could protect you from magic.
Trixie blushed.
I think I may have a couple of pieces that could help you with your other request, however.
Law's Crit stepped in front of a large metallic door with a lock on it, but Milton couldn't tell what kind of metal it was made from. Law's Crit pulled out a key and put it into the lock. He turned the key and pushed the door open, and once he did, the revealed room lit up and showed a vault filled with shelves of strange items. Milton walked in and looked around in amazement. This is like a museum. Is everything you have ever made here? Law's Crit walked in after him and chuckled.
Certainly not. This only holds my creations that have special abilities, which is only a fraction of my work. I mostly work on making art and useful things like tools and building supplies. I do get bored once in a while, however, and when I do, that's when I make something wonderful.
Law's Crit walked deeper into the vault, and Milton and Trixie followed him. He stopped in front of a shelf and picked up a pair of gauntlets and handed them to Milton.
Try these on.
Milton put the gauntlets on, and he looked at them in confusion. What do these do? A smile cracked Law's Crit's face.
Try jumping with them on.
Milton jumped into the air, but he never came back down. He looked at the gauntlets in amazement. These let me fly? That is incredible. I'll be able to find much better places this night with my bow with these. Law's Crit laughed.
I thought you would like those. I thought maybe some architects would appreciate being able to have a different view of their work once in a while, but they weren't interested in them or the effort it would take to learn to use them, so I put them into my vault with all the others.
Law's Crit walked deeper into his vault and took a helmet off of a dummy.
Try this on, miss.
Trixie took the helmet and placed it on her head.
What is this supposed to do?
Be careful with it, but try running.
Trixie turned and ran down the aisle they had just come down. The shelves and artifacts rushed past her in a blur. She stopped amazed.
These give me extra speed? I might even be able to protect everyone with my shield if I can move this fast.
Lostcrit nodded his head.
That's the idea of it. Made that for the king's messengers. They couldn't think of any decrees that would need to be spread that fast, so they refused it. I'm glad to see some of these things are finally starting to see some use again.
Milton smiled. Thank you for these. They will make a big difference in the battle to come. Lostcrit smiled and nodded his head.
I hope so. I'm going to stick around here and see if I can find any more artifacts that might come in handy. You should be able to find a servant outside the vault that will take you to where the king has given his decree. Good luck in the coming battle, and I hope that with the aid of my artifacts, we will meet again one day.
Trixie smiled back.
I hope so.